We see that Kelvin is being reincarnated, and apparently he finds the goddess of reincarnation hot. However, he ended up giving all his memories in exchange for skills in his new life. Kelvin wakes up not knowing where he is. A menu pops up, inviting him to a new world. Pressing start, he hears a voice welcoming him and explaining he's been reborn in a fantasy world with erased memories. This surprises Kelvin. Why would his past self agree to forget everything? The status window shows his chosen skills, S-rank summoning and doubling stats from leveling up. Excited about his skills, Kelvin is ready to begin his adventure. The voice guides him to the nearby town, advising him to register at the guild as an adventurer. Along his way, Kelvin asks the menu if it will be joining him on his adventure. Remembering that he had his memories wiped, it reveals it is actually the goddess of reincarnation, Malphina, who he fell in love with and asked to be his servant. She accepted his request as a way to take a vacation from her job. Kelvin is confused about how he could love her without his memories. He asks if he can summon her, but she tells him he needs to become stronger and have more mana before he can. He arrives at the Adventurers Guild and registers as a basic mage, keeping his summoner skill a secret. Malphina explains that summoners are so rare that kings strive to acquire them. He starts off in the lowest F rank, and the clerk explains that you can only take missions up to 1 rank higher than your own. You can move up a rank if you complete 10 missions in a row. He takes his first job to slay some blue slimes. He picks up a wooden rod, which helps boost his magic ability, and heads to the fields. He comes across 3 slimes. Malphina tells him to try out his other S-rank skill, Appraising Eye. It allows him to see all the slime stats. At S-rank, he can see the stats of anyone up to 100 levels above him. Malphina tells him to contain the slime if he can injure it first. Kelvin attacks using his rod instead of magic so he doesn't kill it in one shot. To his surprise, the slimes are more challenging than expected, but eventually, he is able to land a hit on it, weakening it enough for him to tame it. The taming is successful, and he names it Clotho. He summons it, and it seems to have gained a personality as it jumps up and down. Together with Clotho, they take on some more slimes. Kelvin uses his wind magic, taking out a slime in one hit, and Clotho runs circles around and crushes the others. Kelvin notices that Clotho is much stronger since becoming his summon. Malphina explains that his S-rank summoner skill gives his servants a bonus of 100 to all stats. She also tells him he is the only S-rank summoner in this world, with others only at B or C rank. Kelvin returns to the town and looks for an inn to spend the night. Along the way, he sees an elf locked in a cage. He is disturbed to find slavery is common in this world but tries not to think about it. Kelvin makes his way to the Spirit Song Inn and meets with the receptionist Claire. Claire shows him to his room and also prepares a meal for him. Kelvin munches on his food and reflects on his decision of being reincarnated in this new world, wondering how this new life will treat him. Kelvin just became an E-rank adventurer, and Ange, his friend, is worried because he didn't join a group. But Kelvin can't do that because he's a summoner and has Clotho helping him, so he doesn't really need a team. People in the guild start talking a lot because Kelvin got promoted so quickly. Ange even asks if he's a mage from somewhere else, but Kelvin keeps quiet about it. When Kelvin tries to get a rank D job, a guy with blonde hair interrupts him. This guy, Cashel, pretends to be a lower rank, but he's actually a B-rank adventurer. Cashel acts all proud and challenges Kelvin to go after a tough black ghost knight. The people around them know Cashel's trick, but they stay quiet because Cashel gives them a mean look. Cashel always tricks newcomers by pretending to be weak and then embarrassing them. He claims his group is going after the tough black ghost knight and invites Kelvin to join. Ange tries to warn that it's too hard for Kelvin, but Cashel silences her. Kelvin declines the offer, saying he's not interested. Using his appraisal eye, Kelvin checks Cashel's stats and discovers he's been lying about his strength and rank. Cashel also has a troubling title. Kelvin realizes Cashel won't give up easily. So, Kelvin proposes a deal. They'll compete to see who can defeat the knight first, making the winner of the competition the true champion. Cashel is confident and quickly agrees to the challenge. However, one of Cashel's party members mentions that his rank C appraising eye can't read Kelvin's rank, making them suspicious of him. As night falls, they all head to the location and are surprised to find that the monsters they were supposed to face are already defeated. Kelvin arrives with a smirk, revealing that he knows about their plan to harm him. Apparently, they've been killing other adventurers to boost their own rank points instead of completing their tasks. Raj is the first to attack Kelvin, but he traps him in mud. When Gimel tries to escape, Kelvin sends Clotho after him, who has evolved into a more powerful slime Glatinia. Now titled as a devourer, Clotho can change size at will, making him even more formidable. A flashback shows how Clotho evolved after a fight they had a few days ago. In the present, Clotho sends Gimel flying into the wall. Just then, Raj manages to escape from the mud and tells Cashel that he will handle the slime. But he spoke too soon as the Clotho strangled him mid-air. On the other hand, Cashel approaches to attack Kelvin, but he ends up looking like a squash stuffed toy as Kelvin beats him up. He tells them that he will hand them to the guild later. Melfina's voice tells Kelvin to now head for the main event and defeat the Black Ghost Knight. Kelvin pushes through the door and immediately spots him. He uses his appraisal eye to read his stats and ranking, and he is so impressed that he offers to make a contract with them as well as revealing his true identity. The knight is surprised to see someone talking to him. They both sit down and have a conversation where he reveals to Kelvin that he was a human before he became a monster, but the country and the king he served no longer exist. Kelvin challenges him to show his skills so he can sign the contract, and they both prepare to fight. The knight reveals that his name is Gerard. Then begins their duel. They attack one another constantly and engage in a fierce fight. Just then, the knight remembers his past. He was from the country Alcarl, whose king refused to meet the demands of Lysia, and as a result the kingdom was wiped. He was leaving everything behind as his wife died. He took his daughter with him, but she also died in his arms. This makes the present Gerard angry and he radiates immense power. Just then Kelvin uses his air pressure spell and instructs Clotho to attack him. The next day, everyone is praising Kelvin and Ange instructs him to go visit the head of the guild. It is revealed that he was successful in making a contract with Gerard and he also serves Kelvin now. They are all chattering in his head, making him go crazy. He then sees an old man waiting for him. Kelvin can be seen having a discussion with the head of the guild. It is revealed that Leo has the appraising eye as he's ranked A, so he is able to see right through Kelvin and asks him if he is a summoner. Just then, Gerard's voice tells him to not hide his status as he can't be alone forever and needs to make allies. So he decides to reveal the truth to Leo, but also asks why he ignored Cashel's wrongdoings. Leo tells him that Cashel is a foreign noble, so he couldn't do anything without solid proof. He tells Kelvin that he has met people from another world, which makes Kelvin wonder if there are more people like him. Moreover, the people worry of the revival of the Demon King, so Leo asks for his help while he will provide him with additional support and freedom. Kelvin agrees to this by shaking hands with him. In a change of scene, Claire hugs Kelvin out of joy as he is promoted to rank B. Kelvin takes his lunch upstairs and communicates with Melfina in his head while eating. He asks her about the other heroes she has reincarnated. She reveals that she has reincarnated a few people during the summoning ritual done by the priestess of Doramis. After eating, Kelvin summons Clotho and asks for his reward money back because Clotho has an inventory skill too. Kelvin heads out, but before leaving he asks Claire to set another plate for dinner. As he is walking around town, he shouts that he is going to buy a female slave. He tells Melfina that he plans to train the slave and add her to his party, as he is looking for someone who hasn't been touched by another master. Another buyer almost burnt to death, so he refused to buy her as he thinks she is cursed. The seller tells Kelvin that the half-elf has a powerful curse to burn anyone who touches her. Kelvin asks Melfina how to break the curse. She tells him that it is a Fire Dragon King's curse and only a sacred bless spell from a white magic rank user can do it. The man argues, but Kelvin hands him the money, and he immediately frees her and sells her to him. On their way back, Ethel took a moment to express her gratitude, pausing Kelvin with a warm thank you as she extended her hand for a handshake, a gesture of newfound connection. As they exchanged pleasantries, the conversation took a turn towards Ethel's past. It became evident that her history was shrouded in uncertainty, as she shared the heartbreaking revelation of being sold right after her birth. The weight of this truth caused Ethel to break down emotionally. Amidst the warm glow of the evening, Kelvin's genuine concern continued to shine through as he took that step forward, offering solace to Ethel. Despite his gentle intentions, Ethel, gripped by the fear of inadvertently causing harm, hesitated and instinctively recoiled. Undeterred, Kelvin extended a comforting hand, gently patting her head with a kindness that felt like a balm, unraveling the invisible chains that had bound her. As the handcuffs released their grip, a tidal wave of relief and joy washed over Ethel, materializing in tears that mirrored the newfound freedom she now embraced. Kelvin, using his remaining reservoir of skill points, acted with benevolence, liberating Ethel from the haunting curse that had cast a shadow over her. The trio proceeded to Claire, who, with a nurturing touch, orchestrated a fresh start for Ethel. She guided her through a transformative process, helping her not only clean up but also don an appearance that exuded a renewed sense of confidence. Stepping out into the world, Ethel's transformed look not only caught Kelvin off guard but also stirred a blush on his cheeks as he couldn't help but express admiration for her newfound beauty. The evening unfolded with a shared dinner, a communal experience during which Kelvin revealed the true extent of his powers and identity to Ethel. Their bond deepened as they collaborated on honing Ethel's skills, creating an unspoken connection that transcended the mystical forces at play. The lack of available rooms led to an arrangement where Kelvin and Ethel found themselves sharing a single bed, an unintended closeness that brought forth a comforting warmth and strengthened the connection they shared. Meanwhile, in a distant location, a red-haired girl remained ensnared in chains, her fate hanging in the balance, an unseen chapter of the story waiting to unfold, creating a parallel narrative that added an air of mystery to the overall tale. Ethel can be seen leveling up quite fast and gaining skills as her rank increases. Ange tells Kelvin that he can take the rank up exam after one more job. Kelvin will soon be at rank in the public's eyes, and Ethel is also about to reach rank B. It is shown that Ethel hit her examiner's head. Ange invites Ethel to visit a new sweet shop, so Ethel also asks Kelvin if he will be going. But he doesn't seem to take the hint, so Ange whispers to him, telling him to not turn her down. The next day, Kelvin waits for Ethel. Just then a flashback is shown of Melfina leaving his servant network the day before to give some divine oracle. He can't help but worry that it feels like a date with Ethel. Just then Ange arrives, breaking Kelvin free from his thoughts. Ethel soon shows up looking beautiful and dressed up, so Ange elbows Kelvin to compliment her. As he does, Ethel immediately starts blushing. In a change of scene, they are all seen having the sweets. Ethel offers him some, but he is wary of the public. And just then Ange does the same, gathering even more attention. He refuses them both and says he will eat later at home, which makes the public think that he will take the two of them. However, a blonde, ugly, short man steps in and kicks their table for showing public display of affection. The purple-haired man introduces the short man as the third prince of Trison. Ange tells Kelvin that it is a military country in the east. He then says the most disgusting thing, asking Kelvin to give the girls so he can forgive his crimes. However, Kelvin steps forward and sends the two men flying into the wall using his powers, as according to his appraisal eyes they are both rank D Tabra. The prince gets scared of his powers and kneels down. He reveals that he is here to visit Leo, as he heard of a powerful adventurer using Parth as his base. This is because he wanted that powerful adventurer to serve, since he himself is weak. Kelvin reveals that he is the powerful adventurer Tabra has been looking for, but he immediately refuses his offer to serve him and slams him on the ground. Somewhere else, in the palace of Doramis, a priestess can be seen praying to Melfina's statue and asking for her. Just then, Melfina appears in her glowing angel form and gives her a new oracle. She tells the priestess to send the heroes from another world to the west, and to keep them away from Parth. Meanwhile, Kelvin and Ethel are again sharing the same bed. He apologizes for this, but she asks if he finds her attractive. Kelvin tells her that's not the case, but just then, Ethel confesses her love for him. He assures her and tells her that they should buy a house for separate rooms for them. She then hugs him out of happiness. The next day, all the servants are having a chat as Melfina is back. Kelvin studies the statutes and ranks of all the heroes. A small clotho rests on Ethel's shoulder to let her in on the servant network. Just then Claire comes in to tell Kelvin that Leo has asked for him. Leo tells Kelvin that a demon has been spotted by a rank D dungeon and asks him to take up this job, to which Kelvin agrees. Kelvin arrives with Ethel and Gerard at the dungeon, where they meet Erd, who tells them that there is a barrier around the hut and they are monitoring it carefully. The four of them, including Clotho, prepare to go down. Ethel uses her power to send in a light and Gerard takes the lead. After walking several miles, they reach a gate where Kelvin detects two forms of life. As he opens the door, he sees a red-haired girl chained. Just then a monster emerges, introducing himself as Archdemon Victor. Kelvin soon realizes that he is not just a demon but a powerful one too. When Kelvin asks about the girl, Victor casts a spell sealing the room as he reveals that she is the daughter of the Demon King. Just then, Melfina briefs Kelvin about the past three Demon Kings, according to which she is the daughter of Zero-F, the Demon King Gustav. It is revealed that Victor led them to his trap, so he could eat a powerful human like Kelvin so he could absorb his power, as he possesses a gluttony skill which lets him take others' powers. He then attacks, but Gerard manages to hold it off. Victor reveals his plot to eat the Demon King's daughter so that he can become the new Demon King. Although he is perplexed to see the look on Kelvin's face, Melfina points out that this is his bad habit. Turns out Kelvin can't control his excitement as he has finally met a worthy opponent who is as strong as him. Victor uses black magic to summon his Hades army, which Kelvin finds classy. Kelvin's party is outnumbered. Victor commands his army to attack, and they are all rank B monsters, but Kelvin's smile doesn't fade a bit. He uses his wind shot to attack the monsters. Gerard can also be seen fighting them off. Meanwhile, Victor stands in the middle watching the battle scene unfold. But he is truly impressed with Kelvin, as he comments that he fights like a warrior with years of experience. Victor uses another trick to stop Kelvin from enjoying this too much, so he punches the ground and disappears, but Kelvin is quick to sense him underground, and this surprises Victor as he was not expecting this. However, this doesn't stop him and he continues to fight off Kelvin and Gerard, to a point that Kelvin starts to worry as he can tell that physical attacks are not working, so he decides to summon Clotho, who latches onto Victor's arm. Kelvin then uses his magic absorption skills to restrain him. Just when Victor thought he was winning, Ethel emerges from behind and shoots a blazing arrow at him. Kelvin commands others to fall back as the glory sanctuary has expired. But Victor powers up and is now even more of a threat to him. The battle gets dangerous, but Kelvin and his party stay their ground and start launching their attacks one by one. Gerard steps forward and fights him while Ethel and Kelvin defend him, just in time for Clotho to attack with cursed weapons. Due to these constant attacks from his party, a final blow to Victor sends him flying. But before falling, he protects the daughter with his one hand, and sends the huge rock flying and finally succumbing to his wounds. They all approach as he tells Kelvin he wins. Kelvin asks why he lied if he wasn't really going to eat her, to which Victor replies that Kelvin wouldn't have fought so hard if he didn't. Several hundred years ago, he was entrusted as the girl's caretaker. A flashback shows the girl as a child training with him and struggling too. Gustav kept Sira hidden so his enemies couldn't use her against him. The hero finally came for Gustav, so he ordered Victor to protect Sira as he would cast a seal on her that could only be broken by a human, until she is ready for a peaceful era. As his dying wish, Victor asks Kelvin to let Sira join his party and show the world, and he also refuses Kelvin's offer to heal him, since he only serves the Demon King and it's too late anyways. Sira may be the next Demon King, however he steps up to break her seal and finally wakes her up. As she opens her eyes, she calls her father and Victor stupid and starts crying. The party steps out and hands Erd the proof to appraise at the guild. He carries Sira on his back and Erd asks who she is, but Kelvin tells her that she was captured instead of her true identity, as the camouflage hairbrand seals her wings, which Gustav must have made out of love for her. They all head out to heal and recover from the battle. All his servants have evolved and are now cheerful. Kelvin moves to talk to Sira, who seems to have calmed down. She asks if he is sure about taking her as his servant. He tells her not to worry as he has rank S concealment. They then take her around town and she is excited to see everything, as it is all new for her. Kelvin tells his servants that he is going to the guild to make his report. Kelvin returns to the inn after being promoted to rank A. He is given a surprise by all the people of the town. He also finds out that Erd and Claire are married, and they all seem to be having a good time. After they are all passed out at the inn, Kelvin gets up and search for Sira, who is outside missing Victor. She tells him that she will live her life to the fullest. Kelvin can be seen taking Sira in as her servant. Later they all can be seen training, whose weapon is erendite. It is revealed that her armor was made out of Victor's. They all seem to love their weapons and he lays down to rest, but suddenly starts craving rice to a point he goes crazy. But his servants seem to have no clue of what rice is. They all head to Toraj, and Sira is excited to see the river. It is said to have a rice-like plant, which is why he wanted to go. The other day, Melfina went on a vacation to find her avatars who look just like her, so that Kelvin can summon her. Gerard tells Clotho that he knows why Melfina is in a rush because she is afraid he might fall for one of the girls. Just then Sira warns Kelvin that she thinks some people might be watching them, and she was right when a blue-haired girl steps in front of their carriage. Behind her, a number of men also join her. They introduce themselves as the Black Wind, who seem interested in the girls. But Kelvin tells Sira to go play with them once he is done appraising them. She kicks their ass one by one, but just then a giant man with a hammer her size. However, she stops it just in time with her bare hand. Kelvin reveals that Sira is at level 75, so they don't stand a chance. Even the short-haired girl falls back scared. Sira ties them all up, but the girl reveals that their boss is at level 70. This immediately catches Kelvin's attention, so he asks for more information about him. They finally arrive at Toraj, which looks like old Japan, and Sira is happy to see the sea and asks Kelvin to teach her how to swim. Later that day, the head of Torad's guild thanked them for capturing one of the leaders of the Black Wind. The head named Miss tells them that she and Leo were in the same party 20 years ago, and he was very impressed with Kelvin. Kelvin asks for information on the Black Wind, but Miss tells them that the same party who took them down initially is now the current Black Wind. The leader of the party, Kristoff, who took them down, is considered as a national hero, so they cannot just barge in, as this may create an international conflict between Tryson and Toraj. Sierra gets furious at this, but Kelvin tells her to calm down, as they need to deal with it fully prepared. Just then, they all communicate using the servant network, and Kelvin asks Sierra to use her detection skills, and it turns out that the 4 heroes are in town. Somewhere else, a group of people are captured and scared in Black Wind's dungeons. The creepy man named Hope approaches them with the intention of molesting them. As the mother and daughter struggle under his grip, Kelvin and his party make an entrance. It doesn't take long for Hope to figure out that it is the same party which took down Karna. Gerard sends the man flying down with one swift move. In a change of scene, Prisra can be seen yelling at Kristoff, who tells her that Karna's unit has been wiped out when they were hunting for slaves. She worries that if Tryson finds out, they might be abandoned. She turns to Adu, a muscular man in a mask, who says his only wish is to fight someone strong. Just then, the door opens and Hope is standing, but he soon falls to the ground, shocking everyone. This is followed by several attacks by Kelvin's party on them. Kristoff soon realizes their true identity and seems excited to fight them off, so he takes off his mask. But Kelvin tells him that he's not interested in him, as he is the equivalent of washing a dirty dish before the main dish arrives, leaving everyone open-mouthed. Meanwhile, Toya and his party of the heroes have arrived but sense that something is wrong since no one is around. Toya orders Setsuna to use her detection skills that she just learned to find the Ranka adventurers Miss sent ahead of them. She is only able to sense a number of people gathered in one place, so they head in that direction and come across a door. But they don't know that Kelvin is eagerly waiting for them too. They all prepare themselves to fight as they barge in, only to be welcomed by the giant version of Clotho. The little girl quickly defends Clotho as she tells them that he is the pet of the man who saved them. Just then, the mother of the girl steps in and pleads to Toya to help those adventurers, as there are still a strong number of bandits remaining. They all rush to the last door only to see Kristoff and his gang beaten up, but they mistake them for the Ranka adventurers instead. Toya heads inside to find the Blackwind, but he is greeted by Kelvin and his party. Surprisingly, Kelvin plays along and tells them how he beat the supposed Ranka adventurers, implying that he is the Blackwind instead. Toya gets on his guard immediately, while Kelvin challenges him and his party to fight him only. Setsuna is worried as she can't tell his magical power, so they all decide to fight together and accept his challenge. They all settle down and Ethel reveals that the plan is to have the heroes testify about Kristoff and his wrongdoings, so that Tryson can't protect them. However, Gerard still calls him out for going through all this trouble by taking Blackwind's place just to have a fight with them, calling him a battle junkie. Kelvin asks Ethel to bring out sandwiches so they can just enjoy the fight, even though they don't want him to fight alone. However, Kelvin assures them that he has a weapon which is a skill eater, which will help him deal with all their unique skills. On the other hand, Toya and his party have termed Kelvin as pure evil as they strategize for their fight. They all seem to possess fairy skills, each of its kind. They misunderstood Kelvin for a caster. As Toya approaches, Kelvin launches his Radiance Lancer at them. Gaining a moment of advantage, Kelvin steals the parallel thinking skill, weakening Miyabi. Sierra tells Gerard that he can steal up to 2 skills at a time, but he will lose the old one. This glove was made from Victor's armor. Toya proceeds to attack him, but he dodges them swiftly. They both engage in a close combat, while Nana is healing Miyabi and Setsuna is protecting them. Gerard realizes that Sierra lent Kelvin her martial arts skills, his ability to fight Toya, who has got a rank S swordsmanship. With his bare hands shocks Setsuna and Nana. Just then, Kelvin builds a fort around him, but Setsuna is able to break it with one swift move. However, she was not anticipating Kelvin ready to attack, so both Toya and Setsuna end up injured. But Toya doesn't seem to care and gets right back up to fight. However, Setsuna slaps him and a flashback shows that they all ended up in this world after a portal opened up in their classroom and they were summoned by the priestess. Therefore, she reminds him of this and tells him that they all need to stick together. A light fairy blinds Kelvin, which gives Nana the chance to launch her Frostbound. They all seem to be closing in on Kelvin, but he uses cleft detonation and self-destructs. Toya and the other heroes would have been killed if they were not protected by the fairies. As the smoke blows out, Kelvin can be seen unharmed and healed, giving them yet another shock. The team combines their strength and attacks Kelvin. They use the most powerful spells they have to hold Kelvin down. Kelvin summons a golem to distract them while he conjures up a new spell. Both parties are surprised to see Kelvin come up with a new spell to break free from the hero's spells. They try to attack him with different spells again, but he is way above their league and he easily displaces everything they throw at him. Toya laments while fighting Kelvin that he should use his powers for the greater good if he knows that he is very strong. Kelvin knocks him down and tells him not to try and force his own ideals and views on him. Later on, the heroes wake up to find out that Kelvin is not their enemy. He was the adventurer that defeated the bandits, and he was only fighting them to know their weaknesses and teach them how to be better. Toya realizes this and bows to Kelvin. He declares Kelvin as his teacher. Kelvin sees off the captives they manage to save as they head home. This tells Kelvin that the Blackwind members were also captured and are now being sent back with the help of Torach. Kelvin takes the heroes to a cave for training. They all learn to fight an octo-giant as Kelvin watches from behind and gives them instructions. An S-rank dungeon boss surfaced in the cave and Kelvin had to defeat it. Kelvin tells Toya and his party that they still need to work very hard before they can face S-rank monsters. Days later, Toya and his party prepare to leave the town. They thanked Kelvin for all his help. Kelvin gives them pendants as parting gifts, and Toya promises to be stronger the next time they meet after their departure. Kelvin reveals that the pendants he gave the heroes are stat boosters that will help them to grow stronger and quicker. After seeing them off, he asks Gerard about the Lysia Empire that destroyed his country. Kelvin has not forgotten this and plans to punish them for their sins, but Kelvin wants to get stronger and better before taking on Lysia. Minutes later, Kelvin is informed that the country's king wants to see them. Upon reaching the palace, Kelvin notices that the palace is built like the typical Japanese palace. Gerard informs him that the first ruler of the country is rumored to have come from another world. They enter the palace and Kelvin sees that it also has the same settings as Japanese palaces. They are welcomed by the current ruler of Torach, Tsubaki Fujiwara. Upon hearing her name, Kelvin thinks to himself that the name is definitely a Japanese name. This seals his assumption that the country's first ruler must have been from Japan. This must also be the reason why they are the only country that has rice. Tsubaki says they would have held a celebration for the party's good deed, but Trison is involved, so they are trying to put things under wraps to prevent suspicion from the citizens. Tsubaki asks Kelvin to name anything he wants. Kelvin says he wants rice and Tsubaki is surprised as she says Kelvin could have asked for title, money, or status, but he chose rice. Kelvin reveals that he doesn't want anything that will tie him down. He prefers to be free because he is an adventurer. Because of this, Tsubaki promises to feed Kelvin with all the rice he wants, and she will also send rice to him if he runs out. Kelvin and his party is served with rice, and he enjoys the meal so much that he consumes a whole lot during the banquet. Ethel is busy learning the Japanese recipes from Tsubaki, as this will help her to prepare Japanese dishes in the future. Days later, Ethel prepares lunch for Kelvin and he is very impressed with her cooking. Even the queen joins them and praises Ethel's cooking. The queen even tries to seduce Kelvin to stay back as her personal caretaker, but he immediately refuses. Tsubaki tells Kelvin that she has a special way to send them back home. She reveals that the palace has a teleporter. However, no one can just use it. You have to be given permission from the receiving side too. The reason Kelvin and his party would be able to use it is because Leo already inscribed the permission sequence into their guild cards. Kelvin is surprised that Leo didn't tell them about this. They enter the teleporter and return to Parth. Back at the inn, Claire greets Kelvin and he tells her that he is going to buy a house today. He ends up buying a house that resembles a castle and is huge too. They all head inside to find their rooms, and Clotho is given the yard. Kelvin bought this place because it has a bath. Just then, Luca and her mom arrive as they will be the new servants. After a long day, Kelvin finally lies down to rest, but Melfina finally arrives. Kelvin summons her and she turns out to be a beautiful, angelic woman. Kelvin tells her that she is his type. At the breakfast table, Melfina praises Ethel's cooking, but everyone asks Kelvin about her, so she finally introduces herself and they all seem to love seeing her in person. Later, they are all having snacks and Melfina tells Kelvin that she has a reward for him. She draws a flower and sends it to him. She tells him that it is the goddess of reincarnation's grace he received. It has two effects. The first effect is that it can heal a fatal wound, and the second effect is the most shocking one, as Kelvin can now summon the heroes at his will. Later, Melfina and Sira are fighting in their training session while Luca and Gerard watch them. It is revealed that they are fighting for the spot next to Kelvin on his bed. Later, Melfina finds Kelvin caught up on his thoughts. She finally clears his concerns by telling him that a demon king possesses a special skill, Papia, which multiplies the evil within and also nullifies any damage they may get. Kelvin wants to know how the demon kings are defeated, so Melfina explains that the demon kings might be invincible to attacks from people in this world, but they are vulnerable to attacks from people that come from other worlds. This is where the heroes come into play, and Kelvin realizes that his attacks will definitely work on the Demon King. Melfina adds that there are two ways to bring people into the fantasy world. You either teleport them directly from their world, just like the case of Toya and his friends, or you can also reincarnate a dead soul into the fantasy world. Reincarnation is the better option because it grants the person the option to pick skills that he or she wants, and this will make them strong, just like the case of Kelvin. Later that night, Kelvin decides to summon a hero that he will personally train. He cancels all the summoning with only Ethel remaining behind, who offers him a potion which restores his MP completely. He then instructs Melfina to proceed with the summoning. He tells her to use all of his MP but one and then summon a single person. After it has begun, Kelvin waits as he sips on tea. Just then, a kid appears as the chosen one. He looks a bit like Kelvin. Kelvin introduces himself and explains to the child how he got reincarnated. The child's name is Rio, and he breaks down in gratitude to Kelvin for reincarnating him. A few seconds later, both Kelvin and Rio faint since they are exhausted due to the summoning. Later that night, Rio wakes up and remembers that she was reincarnated. She gets up and goes on to explore the garden where she rests up. Kelvin finds her and tells her his reincarnation story. Kelvin suggests that they need to change her name because he doesn't like the current one. Rio suggests that she changes her name to Rion. She tells Kelvin how she was always sick and is now more than happy to join his party and fight by his side. Kelvin also tells Rion to tell everyone else that she is his little sister from a distant land. Rion is beaming with happiness when she hears this and decides to call him Brother Kel. Kelvin takes the party to the dark purple forest for training. He also brings Ellie and Luca and wants to increase their levels. Although he has golems guarding the house, he wants them to be prepared in case anything bad happens. The rest of the party members are defeating monsters all night long, after which Kelvin uses his experience sharing skill to share it with the rest of the party members, and their levels increase on their respective stats. Just then, a shadow wolf appears, but Kelvin uses his air pressure power to capture it, after which he successfully makes a contract with it. He summons the wolf again and it is now more friendly. Ethel also detects Master Erd's party heading their way from the rear. He tells Kelvin that they are here to defeat monsters so they can be promoted to rank B. They are all sad to see him surrounded with cute and pretty girls. After they left, Sierra and Gerard return and tell Kelvin that they have killed all monsters in the forest, so now Erd's party won't be able to find any monsters for their promotion. Kelvin apologizes to Erd, but he doesn't seem to mind, and instead tells Kelvin that he is ready for a rank S exam. Later, Kelvin and Rion give Alex their new wolf a bath and put a collar around his neck. Kelvin pairs Rion up with Alex so he looks less suspicious, but it turns out that Rion can understand what Alex is saying as she has a special skill. Rion can be seen training with different party members to polish her skills. One night, Kelvin and a few party members are up and dressed up in their armor. Sierra tells Kelvin that a few people are lurking around their mansion. Kelvin uses the far-seeing skill he borrowed from Ethel, and finds out that the highest level among the bandits is 26. So he devises a plan, and allots Rion and Alex with the task of handling them. He lets Rion in on the servant network and gives her the new sword he made for her. Meanwhile, the bandit outside the mansion reveals that he is from the nation of Trison. Rion steps out with Alex and takes them out one after the other. Once she's done, Kelvin sends Clotho to clean up while Kelvin heads out to deal with the bandits who are hiding. He finds in the forest and tells him how his fellows won't be coming back. In a distant land, Emperor Zen Trison of Trison has convened a round-table meeting with his trusted generals to discuss a matter of great concern. The issue at hand revolves around the capture of Kristoff, a significant event that has raised alarms about the safety of their nation. As the leaders of Trison gather, the atmosphere is tense, and the weight of responsibility rests on their shoulders. Among the generals, Tristan emerges as a vocal advocate for a decisive action, going to war against the other three nations and asserting dominance over the entire continent. According to him, Trison has diligently fortified its military capabilities while the neighboring countries have complacently relied on the fragile Treaty of Peace. The prospect of seizing control of the continent appears tempting, with Tristan arguing that the time is ripe for Trison to assert its strength. However, as the discussion unfolds, a division arises among the generals. Two of them express support for Tristan's proposition, believing that a preemptive strike could secure Trison's interests. On the opposing side, two other generals voice their concerns, cautioning against the potential consequences of such a bold and aggressive move. With the decision hanging in the balance, attention turns to the fifth and final general, Clive. Known as the leader of the Magic Knights, Clive has a reputation for relishing confrontations and stirring up mischief. It becomes evident that Clive's inclination towards conflict aligns with Tristan's stance, making it likely that he will cast his vote in favor of going to war. The fate of Trison now rests on General Clive's shoulders as the Round Table meeting awaits his input. The dynamics within the group reflect the complexity of the decision, and the unfolding events hint at the possibility of a turbulent chapter in Trison's history. Kelvin and his party head to an elven village in Guan upon the request of King Leonhardt. A flashback shows that after handing over the assassins to the guild, Leo informs Kelvin that Trison has started making some moves, although it's nothing major at the time, but they need to be careful. Guan is the country bordering Trison and they have reported movements. Leo hands Kelvin the letter from the king and tells him that this is his chance to take the rank S exam. He would need approval from two rulers, out of which Tsubakyai has already given her approval, and now they are heading to take the king's approval. Ethel feels a weird nostalgic feeling as they approach the village, but Kelvin tells her that it is probably because she is an elf too. Soon after, they are stopped by a group of elves, so Kelvin steps out and shows the letter to clear any misunderstandings. Just then, the head of the village Nelris steps out, but he calls Ethel Lumel instead. Later, they are all seen gathered and Kelvin asks him to tell more about Lumel as he confused her with Ethel. It is revealed that several years ago, a fire dragon wreaked wrath upon their place in the East Continent, so Lumel stepped up and offered herself as the sacrifice to be his bride. However, her body was found in the forest a few years later, and they worried that the Fire Dragon King might come back, so they all packed up and shifted to Guan instead. After hearing the story, Ethel thanks him but is also happy with her new family of comrades. Sira and Rion hug her as they get emotional hearing this. Kelvin then brings up the real reason they are here for. Nelris informs Kelvin that a new type of monster, along with its servants, has been kidnapping elves. Kelvin asks for the elders' permission to renovate the village so it aids them in battle. One night, as Trison's army is heading towards the village, they are attacked by invisible arrows. They fall to the ground one after the other. It can be seen that Kelvin and Ethel are targeting the soldiers and shooting arrows which make no sound and can hit any direction Ethel wants them to. Kelvin tells Ethel to leave the commander for interrogation and take out the rest of the soldiers. They are attacking from the watchtower Kelvin built, which is hidden due to Melfina's magic, and the water surrounding the village is laced with Sira's black magic, so whoever tries to enter the village won't be able to get past it. Meanwhile, Gerard is standing guard. As they all take their positions, Kelvin commands them to begin their mission. Meanwhile, a soldier who managed to escape heads to the vice commander, informs him that Unit 4 has been wiped out and the battalion commander has been captured. He tells him that the adventuring party is too strong and the rank B monsters are no match for them. So the vice commander decides to use the horn to call their secret weapon. But just then Rion and Melfina arrive. However, he still proceeds to blow the horn and a gigantic monster can be seen waking up. So Melfina decides to send Alex and Rion to deal with the giant lord. The scene has an uncanny resemblance to fight scenes in Attack of Titan. Just as Rion was about to attack his neck from behind, her sword broke and the monster sent her flying. But she doesn't give up, and with the help of Clotho and Alex, she heads towards him. She uses dual wielding, while Alex also has his own sword, which they use to slash him from every corner, causing him to fall. But the vice commander tells him to transform, and all of his body is now covered in fire. However, the party members don't seem to be intimidated by it, but are instead excited for Rion to fight it. This doesn't seem to scare Rion either, as his flames are not as strong as Ethel's, the ones she trained with. She once again slashes him from every corner, finishing him once and for all, and heads right back to Melfina. Kelvin and Ethel watched from a distance. Just then General Clive arrives and launches a surprise attack on Kelvin, but he easily displaces the spell. Intrigued by Ethel's unique abilities, Clive develops an unsettling fascination with her, attempting to manipulate her into becoming subservient through hypnotic means. Unbeknownst to Clive, Kelvin, with his keen perceptiveness, discerns the true nature of Clive's intentions. Recognizing that Clive possesses a distinctive skill set, Kelvin deduces that they share a commonality as beings from another world. Caught off guard by Kelvin's intervention, Clive is taken aback when Kelvin unveils his own extraordinary abilities. In a display of his formidable appraisal skills, Kelvin senses the underlying potential within Clive and realizes that they both hail from realms beyond their current surroundings. A moment of revelation ensues as they come to understand their shared origins as otherworlders. With a newfound camaraderie rooted in their shared identity, Kelvin, instead of condemning Clive, chooses to redirect their focus. Acknowledging the urgency of the situation and the potential danger E-File faces, Kelvin urges her to retreat to safety. Swiftly following Kelvin's guidance, E-File seamlessly vanishes, turning invisible as she makes her way back to the sanctuary of their village. Meanwhile, Kelvin, harnessing his unique abilities, transforms the surroundings to address the imminent threat. The tower undergoes a magical metamorphosis, giving birth to 4 menacing obsidian blades. Each blade radiates a dark energy, symbolizing Kelvin's determination to protect not only Ethel, but also their shared world from any external threats that may arise. Kelvin sends the blades to attack, but they are easily stopped by Clive's helix barrier. He knocks the blades away, and his knights attack Kelvin from behind. Kelvin notices that they are all under Claw's hypnosis, and Clive gloats about having Kelvin outnumbered. However, an attack suddenly pierces through his barrier as a field shoots from below. Kelvin summons 4 golems to wield his blades and sends them to deal with Klaus. Lights with the 2 alone, Clive summons his staff to fight Kelvin. They fly through the sky, firing magic at each other, and Clive chases after Kelvin. He fires a barrage of energy, which Kelvin dodges, but the attacks land on his knights. Kelvin warns him, but Clive doesn't care, saying he has plenty of replacements. Kelvin ends the chase, and Clive brags about being able to do anything he wants with his powers. Kelvin is annoyed at his arrogance, and the 2 charge at each other. There's a huge clash resulting in Kelvin's staff getting destroyed and Clive getting a scar on his face. He freaks out about the scar and swears to crush Kelvin with his strongest S-ranked spell. He gathers energy, and a deadly hurricane forms around him, sucking up everything nearby. With no other choice, Kelvin takes out his new staff, the S-ranked Black Disaster. He focuses his energy and transforms it into a size. He jumps toward Clive and cuts right through his magic, as well as severing both his legs. Before Kelvin can finish him off, he teleports away, getting saved by General Tristan. Tristan admits to being the one behind the attacks on the Elven village but quickly teleports away. Kelvin is disappointed with the ending of his fight, but the elves celebrate their victory. Melfina, Sarah, and Rion have a race back to Kelvin to see who they'll praise. Rion creates a new skill, winning the race, and Kelvin congratulates her on defeating the giant. Meanwhile, in Trison, Clive wakes up to being chained up by Tristan. His legs have been healed, but he gets tortured by his own slaves as Tristan experiments on him as an otherworlder. The elves have a feast to celebrate, but Kelvin watches from afar. A field joins him, and he expresses how lucky he feels to have his companions, deciding to get even stronger to protect them. A field is glad she got to learn more about her mother and even received a hair ornament that belonged to her from Nellie's. Kelvin helps her put it on, and the rest of the party comes to join them. An elf girl comes up to Kelvin, thanking him for protecting the village, but soon reveals he is the King of Gone, using a special item to change his form and observe him. He congratulates Kelvin and tells him he passed the S-rank promotion. The party congratulates him, and the king reveals there will be a promotion ceremony that includes a mock battle against other S-ranked adventurers. Upon hearing this, Kelvin can only smile, unable to contain himself, excited to fight against other strong adventurers. Unsurprised by his bold, loving nature, the party heads for more adventure, but that's where this story ends.